Hi everybody, hope that you have been well and God has been gracious to you. So we have been studying about Solomon. So we are up to 1 Kings chapter 11, and up to this point, Solomon has had nothing but success. He has built the temple, one of a kind. There's just gold everywhere. It's a beautiful temple. He has built his palace. He has dedicated the temple. The guy literally slaughtered 120,000 sheep and 20,000 head of cattle. He did it in style, and the Queen of Sheba is coming to, and just different people, not just the Queen of Sheba, they're coming to Solomon. They want to bask in his wisdom. They want to hear, what does this man know? And the Queen of Sheba comes and she says that, what I've heard is not even half of what I have actually seen. She's looking at the palace and his wisdom and his servants and everything. And so up to this point, Solomon has achieved massive success in literally every area of life. Solomon has a peaceful kingdom. He has not had to have been at war like David. David had to be at war so much. Solomon is experiencing a very peaceful kingdom. He has built a temple, built the palace. Life is good. So I'm like, why did he mess it up? Like, Solomon, why did you mess this up? So 1 Kings chapter 11 begins to speak about now his rebellion. So Solomon gets married to 700 princesses and 300 concubines, and he starts to worship their gods, and he falls away from God completely. This is a man that was full of wisdom. So even Solomon, with all of his wisdom did not teach him not to fall away from God, because following God is it's the state of your heart. It's not about the state of your mind. It's not about the state of your environment. It's about the state of your heart. And if Solomon, with all of his wealth, would not stay faithful to God, that shows you, if you're here and if you're listening to me and you're waiting for when you will have some money, or when you will, get rich, or when you'll get that job, or when you'll get that thing to worship God, Solomon is proof that you can have all of those things. You can be blessed with everything. God can literally give you each and everything in life you want, and you still will not worship him if you do not want to worship him. So if you are going to worship, and if you're going to stay faithful, then stay faithful now, while you do not have what it is you think you want, while you do not have those blessings that you're asking God for. Worship him now, so that when the blessings do come, you are then able to handle it. And so I was thinking about the story of Solomon. And at first I was like I said, why would you mess all of this up? But it goes back to the root cause of what happened with Adam and Eve, and it is rebellion. We rebel against God, because if a man with everything that he ever would have needed in life still chose to rebel, well, God had told him very clearly, severally, that if you keep my commandments, the fact that Bede Solomon was even willing to compromise the generations that came after him, because God had told him that if you keep my commandments, I'm going to keep my covenant that I made with David, and there will always be a ruler over Israel from your house forevermore. So he stood to gain so much. He had wealth that he could pass down generations. He had kingdom that he could pass down generations to his children. But he compromised that, because not because of women. Yes, because of the women, but the root cause of that is rebellion. And why do we rebel? Why did the devil rebel? Why did the devil rebel against God? It was because of pride, and it was because he wanted to be in control. God was running the show, and he felt like, I can run my own show. I want to run my own show. And that is exactly what we do. So as I was judging Solomon, or wondering rather, why would you compromise everything? What made you compromise everything? And God just spoke to me like, that is what we do as human beings. We can compromise. You can mess up your marriage, mess up your family, mess up your business, mess up so many other things, not because you don't even know the right thing. Because Solomon, he's not doing these things because he does not know the right thing. He wrote the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is basically as him telling us what is right and what is wrong. So he had a very clear knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, and he still did exactly what is wrong. And so we rebel against God, not because we don't know what is the right thing to do, but we rebel against God because we want to be in control. And in essence, and that is why also the devil rebelled against God. He wanted to run his own show. And that is what we do as human beings. And why he created us, he gave us free will, because God did not want robots. He could have created robots. If he wanted people that he could just manipulate, if he wanted people that he could just force to do whatever it is he wanted, he could have created that. But God wanted people who are willing to surrender control to him. And that is what is rebellion, is that we refuse to surrender control to God. We refuse for God to tell us that this is how you should live your life. And that was basically Solomon refusing that. You're telling me how to live my life. You're telling me I can't worship these other gods. You're telling me which women to marry. You're telling me to live right, and you're telling me to be obedient. And God is telling him all of these things that are, by the way, very good for him. But he's like, no, I want to run my own show. And by the way, do you see what happens when you want to run your own show? Solomon was a great man. And by all accounts anyway, despite his sin, he was a great man. He did do very many great things, but his greatness was compromised because he wanted to run his show. And that is what sin is. Sin is rebellion against God. Sin is wanting to be the one on the driver's seat of your life. And you're wondering, yes, I should be on the driver's seat on my life. And the answer is no. If you are a believer and you're the one driving that car, you are on the wrong seat. You should be on the passenger seat, or I don't know, on the back, but it should definitely be God driving your life. It should be you living your life surrender to God. God being the one to give you direction. God being the one telling you go this way or go that way. And then you're probably wondering, then what is the point then of him creating us? And which is why I said that he gave us free will, because he wants to be followed and he wants to be obeyed willingly. And that is where rebellion comes, is you do not want to willingly obey him. You want to use your free will to do what you think is right for you. And God is telling you, go in this direction. And you're like, no, God, my mind or my body or my whatever is telling me that I need to go in this direction. And that is where rebellion comes in. And so even in that 1 Kings chapter 11, God actually shows up to Solomon, not once, but twice, to tell him to stop worshipping other gods. And you know what? I have actually looked at the gods that are stated in 1 Kings chapter 11 that Solomon was apparently worshipping. So there's the goddess of, I think she's called Ashtaroth. Excuse me. She's the goddess of Sidon. So she was the goddess of sexuality and fertility. And then there was another god called is it Chemosh, I believe it was that. And then there's also the god called Molech. So that Chemosh, okay, well, let me just confirm if it's Chemosh or I'm saying my own things. Just a minute. Chemosh, it was the god of Chemosh. So the god of Chemosh was the god of Moab, and then Molech was the god of Ammon. So this Chemosh and Molech, what used to happen is there were human sacrifices, and specifically the god of Molech, there were child sacrifices. So Solomon had gotten so deep into the worship of gods, because he even built altars for the wives to burn incense for these gods, and he built altars for, the wives to worship. And so he is condoning and even encouraging child sacrifice and the blood of children being shed to be offered to this god. So that is how far Solomon had fallen. That is how far Solomon had rebelled, even with his wisdom, because it's not about up here, it's about here. It's about in your heart being able, because he was strong in the mind, he was wise in the mind, but he was weak in his soul. He was weak in his faith. He was weak in discipline. He was weak in self-control. He was weak in believing and standing firm on what God had said over his life. He was a people pleaser because he wanted to make his wives happy. So he got into this worship. And then the thing about sin is it only drags you in deeper. Like, you put in your foot, because of course he just started with marrying one other wife, and of course he just started with worshiping one other god. Then before you know it, he was worshiping gods all over the place, and he was marrying women all over the place. Because that's the thing about sin, that's the thing about rebellion, is it doesn't show you the end. So it sort of just baits you. So he was baited, and he took the bait, and it led him down a rabbit hole. And so God appeared to him twice, telling him not to worship these gods. He did not listen. He still continued. And so God told him that I was going to take the kingdom away from him. But he's not going to do it to him. He's going to do it to his son. I believe his son Rehoboam, because Rehoboam is the one who took over after Solomon. So God gave the kingdom to Jeroboam, who was one of the officials of King Solomon. And what happens is, after King Solomon gets wind of the fact that God has anointed Jeroboam to be king after him and not his son, he tries to kill Jeroboam. So it is sin after sin after sin for Solomon. It is rebellion after rebellion, because once you start rebelling against God, and once you take the seat in your life, in the car that you're driving of your life, and you want to be the one calling the shots, then it's basically actually just you and the devil running the show, right? And you've put God to the side. And so what I wanted to remind us today is, while I was looking at Solomon thinking, why did he do this and why did he do that? And I realized how easy it is to really get into rebellion and how to get into sin is when you are grappling with God for who is controlling your life. And so I want to ask you today, are you the one sitting on the driver's seat of your life, or is it God? Are you living your life according to, especially now, by the way, we are in the era of, I do what I want, how I feel, is what is the right thing. We're no longer depending on what God says is right. It's about what I say is right, or what I feel is right, or what, the environment says, or what, and the only yardstick of what is right is what God says is right. And when we start to live outside of that, we are living in rebellion. When we start to live outside of what God says is right, and when we refuse to surrender our lives to God, to fully surrender our lives to God, and we want to depend, the Bible tells us, do not lean on your own understanding, because your own understanding will lead you astray. This mind of ours, it can lead us astray. Our thoughts can lead us astray. So that is why we have to depend on God and His Holy Spirit to be the one to guide us. And what I have learned about surrendering control is, ultimately, God leads me to the path that I'll enjoy the most. That is the good news, is that when you surrender, you think you know what you want for your life, but actually when you're surrendered is when you find what is best for your life. When you tell God that, listen, you're the one who created me, you're the one who knows what is best for me, and you surrender to Him, you start living your best life, because He guides you into, because if He created you, for example, a car was made to drive, right? If it's doing anything else other than driving, it is not living its full purpose, right? So when you start to surrender control to God, God shows you things about that car that you did not know it could do. He starts to show you the potential of that car. How fast can it drive? What is its strength? What is its endurance? What are the hidden tips and tricks? Like, God is the manufacturer, so He knows best. And if you want to live your best life, it is to surrender to God and to give up control of your life. Look at Solomon. He was living his best life while God was controlling it. He was living his best life. Well, his wealth in today's whatever is $2 trillion. He was the richest man alive. $2 trillion was his net worth. And when he was living in alignment with God wanted, he was living his best life. The second he thought he knew and he started to worship other gods and he started to do other things, that is when he stopped to live his best life. And so the devil has lied to us that we need to be in control of our lives to live our best lives, whereas it's actually the absolute opposite. When you are in zero control of your life, and I mean zero, the more you surrender to God, the more you live your best life, because He takes you down the exact path that He created you for. And that is where the joy is. That is where the peace is. That is where the happiness is. That is where purpose is. That is where everything that you were created to be is. And so just to urge us today and to ask that one question, are you rebelling against God even without knowing? Because I feel sometimes we do it without knowing. Are you rebelling, or are you letting God, are you surrendered to God? Are you letting God control your life, or are you the one who is in control of your life? Be blessed.